Hello, everyone. Troy Ritchie here. This is the first episode of the What Say You podcast, live podcast. And I have a special guest with me that you cannot see. We won't reveal his name. We're going to have a conversation. He's a former, I'll let you kind of share what your background here is in a minute. A couple of things, please. Give your feedback or ask your questions, especially related to audio. We're utilizing these type of mics here, and they may not be coming in as clear as we'd like. So we're relying on you. According to us, all of the specifications and sounds are coming in great. So just let us know. And I've never done this anonymous, where I'm talking to someone and the audience can't see you. So the individual sitting right here, and I'm going to look at him this way throughout asking several questions. And the whole purpose of the What Say You live podcast is to talk about things that are topics and, thank you, Tim, for confirming that you can hear. Topics that may not be comfortable. And what I've learned about our society is when you're behind a keyboard, you're kind of a butthole, really. And you're saying things that you would never say to someone in person. And so what I would like to do with these What Say You conversations is to talk about things that people have taken sides on. And for this one, we're going to talk about what say you about the police. And normally I don't have guests, although this is the first episode. So maybe it's a trend. But I call upon you when anything happens or I send a text. I'm like, hey, why are they doing this and doing that? And I've got some names that we'll discuss, but to add credibility, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure, fair enough. Since about 2003, I have been in some capacity of law enforcement or the criminal justice system, from starting off federal, going to state and local, and now I'm currently in the private sector doing criminal investigations. So I've got a variety of experiences, federally as a military police officer coming out, going state and local as a financial crimes investigator, SWAT team member, field training officer, training new officers coming onto our local departments in the Virginia area. So I've seen a great vast of different personalities, different individuals that have come through my career. So a little bit of a different perspective than many people that are actively in the department today.
Sure. And just for you, the audience, we're not going into the race talk as much as some may like systematic racism or whatnot. It's probably its own show, quite frankly. What we're talking about specifically is the mindset of a police officer. And just to reveal, you are white.
Yes.
Right. You're white male. And so race may come into play as we discuss. It's not the purpose of this show. That's a whole nother show. This is about mindset and what I'll put it this way. When I have a great idea for a stock tip and I call my father-in-law, who is in the market, he kind of laughs at me like, Troy, you don't know what you're talking about. Now, similarly, if he calls and tells me tips about the Bible, I look at him and say, you have no idea what you're talking about, because that's some of the things. And so when part of the purpose of this show is that I will post things that I find appalling, and police officers will say, Troy, you don't know. Give it 48 hours, give it 24 hours. And so there's two sides to this. So I'm going to read off a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals that since March of this year that have been killed or injured through police shootings. And then I just want to find out, like I do when I call you up and say, hey, what's going on here? Just kind of obviously it's your opinion. He is not representing any type of organization. This is completely off the cuff. We don't have an agenda here, really. Well, our agenda is that we'd like to see peace throughout our land, the divided states of America. So let's talk Breonna Taylor. I did not know a lot about this. I know my daughter will hashtag say her name. I know that some of the NBA players are saying it. So I didn't really know a lot about it. And so I started doing research, and I'll just give you some stats and then I'll kind of ask you questions on this. Was with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, The media says it was a no-knock raid. What is a no-knock raid?
So every state has different characteristics. I think Louisville would maybe be different on what you need to actually get a no knock warrant, no knock raid. Generally speaking, if detectives have some form of probable cause to go into a hostile situation, they'll activate the SWAT team or another emergency response unit to go in with them. Generally, the individual that they're going into either apprehend, question, take down, whatever, however you want to phrase it, has a violent past, violent felony. So the purpose of the no knock warrant is to get into that individual before they have an opportunity to either A, take a hostage,
Yeah,
B, cause a disruptive situation on where you're at. So kind of the element of surprise
sure.
to then get him, subdue him without the most minimal use of force possible. Um,
Okay. After that, and so when I watch the movies and they've got that battering ram looking thing, is that an example of a no-knock raid where they bust open the door and come in?
No, so it could be.
Okay.
Generally speaking, the difference between the two would one, law enforcement would approach the door. You'd have to knock on the door, whatever your department characterizes as announcing yourself. Where
Sure.
police, police, police. You have to say it 3 times, and then you can, if no one answers the door, you give them a reasonable amount of time.
Got
You
it.
can then go in, break down the door, go in. A
Got it.
no knock warrant is all
Just
but
go in.
going up to the door, hitting in the door, and you're going in.
Interesting. Can you open the door, or does it have to be hitting it through the door?
Oh no, sure. I mean, you
You
always
try
you,
it?
you always
The
check
door's
you always
unlocked?
check first. I mean,
Okay, so and none of this is a laughing matter. We're not trying to make light of this. So media claims it was a no-knock raid. I watched a little bit of the Hulu special, The Killing of Breonna Taylor. Misleading title. They're trying to sell, or they're trying to. And after the first 5 minutes, it was not about any of the facts. It went into her story. So I watched the first 5, and Kenneth Walker, her current boyfriend, he was watching TV. She was asleep. He said they knocked, like they actually knocked. So you have an example of what the media is saying, and then you have an example of what the individual said. And I'm just going to read this. Kenneth Walker heard pounding on the door at 12:43 a.m., pulled his legal firearm, fired one shot through the door, hitting police officer Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly in the leg. Now, I have not gone through police training. I was in the military, but that's nothing compared to this. I'm assuming that if you shoot an officer, that's kind of a green light for them to fire back. Is that not a fair assumption?
yes. I, not being there in that circumstance, being a prior SWAT team member, I could only imagine the heightened sense of use of force that these individuals would be going through. However, I'm not to Monday morning quarterback or
Sure.
not to look
Sure.
after what they did. Generally speaking, if bullets start coming through the door at you, you're withdrawing back to some degree.
Okay. So there is an example of them not firing back because they're regrouping or
A lot
whatnot.
of times you don't know what's on the other side of the door.
Absolutely.
There could be a room of children.
I mean, they were looking for a drug dealer, Jamarcus Glover.
Correct. There's so many
Right.
what ifs that could potentially,
Right.
And that's where, not knowing what the warrant was for, right? Like, so when the news reports come out originally, everyone's got a compelling story, right? The officers that were going in there, they know what is on that warrant. They know the individual that they were looking for,
Yep.
potential other people. Chances are there was surveillance on that apartment, knowing who might have been in there.
Because they thought the actual Breonna Taylor was in conjunction, was helping Jamarcus Glover
To some degree.
to some degree.
Yeah,
Right? There was some, whether they're right or wrong, that was there
enough to where they probably would have pulled her in to question her as well on what was going on.
Absolutely. But is there ever, because I think about that and I'm like, I have no problem. Obviously every death is tragic. I'm not outraged if a police officer is shot and now it's a fight. Now it's a shoot off, right?
Sure. I mean, I'm guessing to some degree when the shot came through the door, someone then knocked in the door to see who was shooting at them, and then the fight was on.
Right.
To that extent.
Right.
You look at the broad scheme of things. Well, geez, they're in an apartment building, right? Once bullets start flying in an apartment building, generally speaking, you have sheetrock or a little bit of barrier between the walls. The last thing the police department wants, or those officers, is for collateral damage in other apartments, people sleeping or
Sure.
what may be.
Sure.
So that might have been another take that these officers had. Like, hey, wait a second,
They've got to eliminate
we
that
don't have an
threat.
opportunity to withdraw. This guy is actively shooting at us. We have
Right.
to, and then that's where the mindset comes, where law enforcement these days, let's say the last 10 years, with all these school shootings, all these active shooters that we've had across the country, from Connecticut here to Las Vegas, all over, to where you almost have a different mindset, a different training. When shots start coming at you, you need to stop that threat, especially when we're in an apartment building or a setting where other people are. So, like I said,
now, what if someone says, the media is trying to spin it that the amount of gunfire was excessive? What, and we'll talk more about it, like discharging 7 shots kind of thing. What is it just simply pull the trigger and then let it, because if there's 4 officers there, 1 is shot, 3 are now pulling their guns up, I would imagine it's an automatic of some sort. Is there ever we should only take 3 or 4 shots?
No, I think you are trained to. Now we have to remember that these individuals that were going into this circumstance were probably slightly more higher trained with regards to these incidents, as opposed to your regular patrol officer who might be on the street. But generally speaking, as soon as gunfire's at you and you're shooting back, you are eliminating the threat.
Because their mind is that Jamarcus Glover, my wife is texting me asking if I can call her. If someone could please let my wife know that I am in the middle of a live podcast, that would be great. So, and they're thinking they're going after Jamarcus Glover and Adrian Walker, who are the main targets. Shots come back through. Those guys have a checkered past. Says their ex-boyfriend Jamarcus Glover had 2 bench warrants, and since he has now been arrested, Breonna Taylor had ties. It's no excuse. And Tim, if you have a question, please, we'd love to include it in the show. I don't know what he's laughing about, but he's saying could be children. So I don't know what that means.
No, for sure. There could be children in that apartment.
So is that what this guy's saying? Maybe
maybe it's just that would be an absolute consideration.
So I get shot in the leg. I'm going after criminals. I don't shoot because there could be children. Do they think? I mean, how can?
No, I don't think at that moment you are eliminating the threat. You're looking around the room. Every circumstance that every training incident that I've been in, you are actively, one of those 3 officers is actively looking around the room at what is going on. Are there other children in there? I mean, if they heard kids yelling, or if they heard another individual yelling in the background, they probably would have withdrawn and pulled back. Again,
did they shoot through the wall?
I don't know.
I don't know that either. If they open the door, they're not going to shoot at a girl.
No, I would
not gonna.
I would not. If the officers were sitting there firing through a wall into an apartment, that would be wrong on all accounts.
Oh, well then.
I mean, in my personal opinion,
right.
I cannot.
So that's where they could get reprimanded. You have to open the door. Why the door open? To acknowledge the threat? Because he had the gun, he didn't die. I don't even think he got shot.
I think you're opening the door to see what's shooting at you. What's coming?
Okay.
To some degree, I mean, you're going to initiate. They have shields. They're going to initiate their.
I was laughing that my wife texted me.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I think they're going to have shields. They're going to have the bulletproof shields coming through if that's the type of warrant that they're. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know what type of apparatus they had.
Right. Now, in the instance of, and we're just to let you know, this is the What Say You podcast, live podcast. We have a guest on the episode, anonymous guest, and we're talking What Say You about the police. And this is a former police officer, former SWAT, former MP, just giving his thoughts, not to criticize the police. That is not what we're trying to do.
Not at all.
We're not trying to do that at all. We're trying to just, there's so many, I'm on one side, you're on the other side, and people like LeBron James are jumping to conclusions. And so you're saying that the door has to be open, in your opinion. If I'm with a group of 5 or 4 and all 3 are just responding, officer shot, and then bam, 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 do I have the ability to not as an individual?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You are responsible for your weapon and the bullets that come out of your weapon.
Okay. So if the other
End of
guys
end
aren't
of
gonna,
story.
they're not gonna be in my face later. Why didn't you? Like Hollywood portrays this brotherhood of, that is above the law
I
kind of
never
deal.
experienced that.
You never experienced. That's a great answer.
I think that everybody has their own reasons to or not to, or everybody has a different
Mhm.
threat perception of what is a threat, what isn't a threat.
Mhm.
And part of being a police officer is being able to articulate why you did something or why you didn't do something.
Because as an individual,
As an individual,
as an
you're
individual,
responsible.
right,
I'm the
right,
one
right,
that's, if I'm wrong, I'm going to
right.
jail.
And how many states have you been
Uh,
in this capacity?
Virginia, the state of Virginia, and
You
the
don't need
state.
to reveal the states,
Oh,
but
that's
just
fine. Virginia and Mississippi.
okay.
So
So in two different,
I've seen two extremes: Northern Virginia, right outside Washington D.C.,
yeah.
and the entire state of Mississippi.
But even in those extremes, you're saying that you did not, in your experience, feel this brotherhood of we're the blues
No,
where we're
there is a brotherhood.
Mhm.
There is to some degree. I would not compare it to the military. I think the military bond was far stronger. Be, because you are all actively together at all times,
right,
right?
right,
Overseas and multiple deployments that I was on. You just different type of. It's a different
absolutely.
type of fight. It's a different type of survival.
Could I say that's a true enemy, where in the United States they shouldn't be looked at as enemies? Is that a
Yeah,
fair?
I think that's fair.
That's fair.
I do think that's fair.
Okay,
But as a police officer, at the end of the day, we're people, right?
absolutely.
We go home
Yep.
at the end of when my clock ends or my shift ends. I'm going home to my family to sit down and have dinner with my wife and kids,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so there's other things to think about,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to move on to Daniel Prude, and I just heard about this recently because of the protests. This is back in March 23rd. The media says Prude had been suffering from a mental health episode and was running naked in the city streets. The officers put a spit hood over his head after he began spitting. That's the media. This is what the police and what I believe is facts. The police are saying the call came in, an actual call came in about a naked man uh, shouting he had the coronavirus. Okay. Police later revealed he was high on PCP. So this is March. When did they shut things down?
So you've got to take a different. Now I've dealt with Northern Virginia. Did have a still. Who knows if it still does, but PCP was
Mm,
a very popular drug.
okay.
And it's kind of like that superhuman. I think any officer or anybody in law enforcement that's dealt with somebody on PCP can attest that you all but have superhuman strength to
Crazy.
some degree. It's absolutely your body tenses up. It's unbelievable what it does to people.
Okay.
I mean, think of the context, right? You're in Rochester, New York, upstate New York in March. I think even in the video, it's snowing, right? So you have a naked
And New York's the epicenter, isn't it, around this time
for that
where
time for
for
coronavirus.
coronavirus?
It
So
was crazy,
right,
right? And
right.
so you have a grown naked man walking down the street in a snowstorm. Clearly, there was something going on
Where
there.
neighbors are calling.
Correct.
Because I was surprised that it wasn't them driving by going, there's a naked man walking. No, this
Correct.
was an actual, hey, 911 type deal.
And I'm sure when the officers first arrived, they haven't shown it. I not that I've seen that video, but I'm sure there was some point in time that they realized, hey, this wasn't a mental health distress where you might be able to kind of talk someone down and relax them and calm them down. This was someone high on PCP, on an illegal
And
narcotic.
he's spitting
Correct. So
what we have know as the greatest pandemic ever to
you don't
hit
know.
this time. Is that, I've heard it from non-police, that spitting is actual offense. Like it is
It's an assault.
aggressive.
It's a form of assault.
It's a form of assault. Why?
Where
Why is that?
it's bodily fluid, right? I mean, if the
Okay.
person has AIDS, if they have HIV, hepatitis, you don't know.
So in
And next thing you know,
training,
someone spits in your eyes, and now
Okay.
I have to sit there for 7 days waiting to find out my HIV
so that
test.
in training, that's the thing. If they show a gun, a knife, and then it comes into spitting is a part of that, where
It's a different level of force.
hence spit hoods. right? That's why they made them, probably.
Which is, and anybody that's ever dealt with a spit hood, I mean, I don't know the brand that they used, I don't, but every spit hood I've ever dealt with is nothing more than mosquito netting.
Sure.
To some degree, it's
Sure.
it's like putting a screen over your face.
Mhm.
It's not a plastic bag. It's not an evil torture device that's out there. It's not like in the military where people get rushed off, and
Mhm.
it was nothing more than some netting. The guy, so the whole asphyxiation as a result of that bag, I don't know. So there's clearly other issues going on with the gentleman.
Yeah.
I think some of the pictures, we just haven't seen the full context
Yeah.
of what happened.
So when I hear about Breonna Taylor, it's tragic. No one should die like that. I'm not outraged. When I hear about Daniel Prude, tragic. I'm not. I feel like they're doing their job. Sure, we can play money quarterback, but I feel like that you guys are experts.
I think the fact you got to look at. I mean, the amount of arrests that happen on a daily basis.
Mhm.
If you look at nationwide, the amount of arrests that happen on individuals with illegal drugs in their system that are resisting arrest, absolutely astronomical. If you just look at the month of March,
Yeah.
I could only imagine what the amount of arrests were during that month.
Mhm.
The fact that this one specific arrest was picked out is beyond me. And then I don't know whether it was geared into the race aspect, but then your chief of police and part of your command staff was African American,
And they've resigned.
and they've all stepped down because
They've all stepped down.
they just don't want to be a part of, not necessarily of the actions of those officers, but of
Right.
the quasi kind of trial that's happened in the public perception, right? It's just
Yeah.
it's unfortunate.
Well, and I tell you, I get offended because I have mental health. I'm an artist. Anyone who's an artist, a good one anyway, has mental health problems, and I'm offended that they deem high on something as mental health problems in the police. Is that ever talked about, or is mental health someone that truly has either bouts with depression or whatnot versus I'm on a drug?
Okay, so from what I recall, in the late 2000s, there was a very strong push for mental health training, where even in the department I was at that time, brought in countless experts, psychologists,
For
people,
them or for addressing it with
no,
others?
to talk to officers, to
Got it.
train us
Yeah.
on, hey, this person is bipolar, or hey, this person has
Like recognize it.
recognize, maybe, I mean, not that we would clinically diagnose somebody,
Absolutely.
but hey, okay, this guy, this is the issue. We need to get this guy help quick. And what, if someone has a certain type of disability, the worst thing you can do sometimes is to put them in handcuffs in the back of a car, right? Because you're just gonna, their blood pressure is gonna go through the roof, and you're gonna run into situations. So maybe the next thing to do is, hey, sir, let me get a family member out here. Let's get someone out here that can help us get you help. And
now I would imagine that with the Daniel Prude, we're talking about Daniel Prude, when they came up to him, that might have been in their mindset. Do you guys recognize it's PCP immediately, based on what individuals are doing or resistance strength? Is there a way that
there were enough? My feeling is there were enough officers in that video. One of them had an idea
because of his
off the
strength?
bat. You can tell the way that they're tensing up their bodies.
Wow.
There's an odor. There's an
Oh, you're
odor that
kidding.
will actually come out of the skin that you can pick up on, that you know right off the bat that it's PCP and not
Interesting.
mental. So there are signs there
Wow.
that they could, especially cold weather, smell carries a little bit more. So it's not like a hot, steamy night in southern Alabama where the humidity is so deep and you can't. A lot of times in that cold air, your body natural heat will kick on, right? And so the odors will actually come out more of your body. So it's just something to think about. But again, I think that there was so much more there that we just don't know about. And it's that almost, we live in a society almost of this knee-jerk reaction, right? To just,
and it was 10 days after Breonna Taylor, and I know that was a big thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, it tipped over with George Floyd, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I just want to say that Daniel Prude had 37 arrests and 9 convictions since 1995. So
chances are one of those arrests chances are those officers were very familiar with that individual and knew he had a history of PCP.
How would they know? Like if they see a naked man walking, they get a call, they don't know yet, they drive there. Do they put a description into the laptop in the car, or do they take a picture?
And now I hope this isn't taken the wrong way, but there were times where we would get calls at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. They would say what street the naked male
Oh,
individual is on. We would be able to formulate a guess that it was a specific individual or group of individuals that live in that area, because you're not getting high on PCP and then just wandering clearly to the other side of
oh, I
town,
got it.
right?
Got it.
So chances are the officers that work that beat, especially up in Rochester, a little bit of a bigger city, right? So those
Hmm.
officers, a lot of times those officers are assigned to specific beats, and you become very familiar with the community and the troublemakers and the non-troublemakers. And
Especially with 37 arrests, 9 convictions.
chances are they had an idea of
Got it.
who they were dealing with. Someone knew that, hey, this guy has a history of this.
Got it.
We might need to look out. Maybe
Yeah.
they've fought. Maybe he's been known to resist in the past. So hey, let's
Yeah.
before things
Because they
get
had
out of hand.
seven guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say, hey, before things get out of hand, let's do something here. So I don't know.
Yeah, Tim, that's a great question, and this is a great question that I want to make sure to ask. For the tipping point, now we're going to talk. So we just talked about 2 tragic deaths.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not outraged by. Really, I'm trusting in the police. Now we're getting into 3 deaths where I was outraged by, and the first one was George Floyd. We all saw. Well, my wife won't watch it. We've seen the video. Do you watch the video, or do you stay away from that?
No, I've seen the video.
You've seen the video. Okay. So now there's a new video out to show his resistance, and that changes a little bit. It doesn't change my opinion on the neck. What it does change is that they couldn't get him in the car. So a lot of the questions was, why not put him in the car? They couldn't. The man.
Yeah,
I saw the video, this 15-minute video of them trying to get him in the car. And so they put him down. When you see that, again, we'll go back to cause of death. Floyd Family Independent Examiner ruled that it was asphyxiation.
Asphyxiation. Yeah.
Asphyxiation.
Yeah.
Thank you. From sustained pressure. Autopsy from the county medical. Death due to heart failure. Now, I don't think anyone says the man. That's right to be on his neck or whatever. George Floyd saying, I can't breathe. Obviously, you can breathe because you're speaking, right? I mean, if you can't breathe, you can't talk. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he could breathe. And this is a question that I need to ask, and then I want to get to Tim's. The question that I have is, how often, because I watch Law and Order. We talked about this in our prep. When I watch Law and Order, most of the times I'm wrong because I believe the dude is telling the truth, and then comes to find out he was lying the whole time. Or The Practice, a law show where they get the guy off, and at the end the guy's like, I did it the whole time. Those are actors. It's Hollywood. Every arrest, when you encounter someone like that, whether they're high, are they always saying things like, you're hurting me, my chest? Are they giving those examples of, I can't breathe, I'm going to die? Do you hear that a lot out in the beat?
Yes.
Okay.
And in my experience, depending on the individual, have I arrested that individual before? Does this individual have a criminal history? Now, I'm not saying that the arrest was based on the criminal history or anything
Absolutely.
like that. I'm just saying individuals who have been arrested a lot are very familiar with the system. They're very familiar, and they will test.
Kind of like kids when we parent our kids.
Kids and parents, right? They'll test dad or they'll test mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
To where all of a sudden, here, hold on, let's handcuff you in the front. That's okay. And the next thing you know, they're hiding something, or there's something going missing.
Right.
So there's so much that goes into the decisions that the officers have to make at that moment with regards to someone. Because at the end of the day, as soon as you put the handcuffs on somebody, they are in your custody. They are under your protection, good, bad, or indifferent, until you release them to the jail.
And this leads us to Tim's question. So I watch the NFL sometimes, and there's a dog pile at the end. Russell Wilson's at the bottom of the dog pile, whatever. And I'll see players get up and purposely use the body of the person that they're laying on to lift themselves up as an extra, like an extra shot, right? So I kind of look at this cop kind of doing that. I don't think his intent was to kill him, but it was like, you know what? You've been moving around like a fish. I'm going to hold you down, and I'm going to place my knee here to show I'm an authority, or whatever it is. So Tim's question is, if you see a colleague acting in an unethical way, hurting or shooting what is clearly an innocent person. Well, Tim, that's easy. Let's say they're not clearly an innocent person. Let's say let's not even give them innocence or guilt. They're a person. Are you trained to follow the actions of your peers and pull your gun as well, or to stop or confront your colleagues? Are officers trained to speak up or confront? Great question.
Great question.
Tim, I'm going to spin it to where the cameras are on George Floyd. The people are saying, get off, he can't breathe. And there's 3 other officers. So and they were all rookies or something. There was some news where they were new, and this guy was a bad guy anyway, the police officer. Long list of it.
So let's take, I think, to look at this situation, you have to take, there's that is a good question. So I'll start here. In the police academy, I would say most police academies at some degree will have a training-based scenario where you are investigating a dead body that washed up well, depending on where you are, whether it's a lake or anything like that, or you find
Hudson
a homeless
River.
guy.
Let's
yeah, all right, let's go. And you know, you're searching the body, trying to find identification. All of a sudden, your partner finds a Rolex watch. Well, you guys only make about $26,000 a year. Your partner decides to put the Rolex watch in his pocket, and
you see it.
And you see it happen, right? So everything is set up in this training-based scenario, right? And they're testing to see your moral compass, right? What is the right thing to do in that situation? And it's a pass or fail, and the pass or fail is not based on the quality of the report you wrote or whether you approached the scene and secured it or whatever. You could have done everything right, but at the end of the day, if you don't write down what you saw your partner do, you fail.
And it's almost, you have to do it without emotion, correct?
Yes.
You just write down what you saw.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, to answer the question, could the officer have pulled his gun at that moment? Man, that would have been
to the other officer.
That would have been a train wreck.
I don't think he's suggesting that.
To stop him from putting a knee on the guy's neck?
No, he's saying if I'm a team of 4 and 3 of them pull their weapon and I don't feel that I should do that, I don't, and I keep it down here.
Correct. You do not pull your weapon, and you try to de-escalate the situation.
Right.
You try to.
Right.
You try everything in your power to de-escalate that.
I'm on record. I'm not for this. Whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And then looking at this specific scenario, those officers being field training, one of those, I mean, that was his field training officer with his knee on the guy's neck.
Right.
I mean, and this is your first, and I'm telling you, your first week as a rookie officer, when you're assigned to your field training officer, your first week, you say nothing. You literally sit in the passenger seat and you follow.
However, they can still be in trouble because they didn't.
Correct.
Because they went through academy.
Absolutely.
And they did that exact thing that you.
And I'm not saying with that scenario, but they know right or wrong.
Right.
And
how old are these guys coming in?
I mean, they could be 20, 22, 23, 24 years old.
And are you seeing a difference between rookies that are former military versus rookies that are not?
You know, that's another super interesting aspect is, you know, one thing about law enforcement that everybody's talking about these days is use of force, right? You know, why did they pull their weapon? Why did they shoot? Why did they put them in a chokehold, right? Law enforcement went through a period where we, exactly what we are going through today, all these different scenarios that are sparking up, we literally dealt with this maybe 10 years ago or so. I think was it Freddie Gray and in New York and
Baltimore,
Ferguson, right? Baltimore. Yeah. We literally went through this period with civil unrest and unjustified circumstances that people felt. And I really think you had a period of time where a lot of experienced officers left the department because they didn't want to risk getting in trouble. Not that they might have done anything wrong, but they just put yourself in a circumstance where now all of a sudden you have to hire lawyers, and you know you were right the whole time, or your family. You have to. There's so many different. Right?
Interesting.
Is it worth it? I think everybody, depending on their job, whether it's a doctor having to, some patient, they did something and now patient's coming back at them.
Right.
You face this moment of time. It's like, God, is it really worth it? Is it
Because
really?
you've got that family to come home to. And you've got,
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So there's just so much to think about. And in this circumstance right here, I think these other officers that were there, man, you almost had a mob-like mentality, right? That situation right there, I firmly believe that. I think at one point they did have him in the vehicle, then they pulled him out because he couldn't breathe. When you had him in that vehicle, they should have been driving down to the next Walmart parking lot or wherever they could have gotten away from that scene, because everybody surrounded that scene, right? I'm not saying they were making it worse or not making it worse. And I'm not saying you need to get it off of video, because everything was on body camera.
Yeah. And even if he's squirming around in the back seat, they can drive. They've got
just get him to the jail, get him to the hospital,
get him away from the mob.
Get him away from the mob. That mob-like mentality that we're seeing.
And
today.
again, the smirk on the officer's face when he had his knee there, that's 1,000 words, right?
Oh,
is that this individual
but is a bad actor.
Doesn't represent the boys in blue.
Exactly. And I think that every profession, whether doctors, lawyers, whether you hear about it every day or not, there's bad actors in that profession. And I don't think any officer would sit here and say that, oh no, everyone's a good guy. Everybody's out there for the right reasons.
Right.
Unfortunately, they're not.
The head of the union here in Vegas, the Golden Knights did their protest, and the union head wrote a letter to the Golden Knights, Vegas Golden Knights, and said, "Don't appreciate what you guys are doing," And his last line was, "No one hates a bad cop more than a good cop." I thought that was.
I agree.
I thought that was a fantastic
Absolutely agree.
way to say that. Look, and then in the Vegas Golden Knights' defense, they did apologize for what their part in it, and that's why we're here talking about
exactly.
it. Because let's talk about it.
People have good intentions,
right?
I'm not saying these officers. I'm saying, but the public perception,
the Knights, the police union,
everybody has good intentions, right? But when we start to this 24/7 media frenzy, right? And there's so much divisiveness on politics, or whatever it may be, right? So we take this broad brush and you just kind of stroke it across the canvas, and all of a sudden it's just like, whoa, you got to take a side. What side are you? What side?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, well, hold on, because I think everybody has good intentions. Everybody wants the right outcome.
That's right. And George Floyd was convicted of 8 crimes between 1997 and 2005. And again, these numbers are not to say he deserved it, especially with George Floyd. Floyd, I was outraged.
Yeah, he didn't deserve it.
I was outraged, just as everyone else was. Now, I don't support rioting. And it's funny, I'll share this because we got to wrap this up. This has been great, but we got to wrap up. I'll share that when people say, well, if you don't just adhere to the command of the police, if you just don't resist arrest, you're okay. They're not saying I justify it. However, the tone is that it's justified. And then I hear the other side when I'm just as outraged with rioting. The people will say, well, if the police just didn't do this, there would be no riots. And it's almost like this passive aggressive way behind a keyboard where they can say, just resist arrest, folks, and you won't die. And the other side says, just don't police brutality me, and we won't riot your city. And that, to me, is not the answer. It's blackmail, extortion. What do you call that?
Gosh, I don't know. Listen.
Ignorance.
At the end of the day, until the public, for all these individuals that are out there screaming defund the police and the mob-like mentality that's just sweeping across major cities, right? Simply put, hey, at 2:00 in the morning, when something really, really bad is happening next door to you, and you are hearing it happen, whether it be a guy assaulting a woman or a woman assaulting a guy, whatever it may be, until you, as a human being, are willing to walk next door in the middle of the night, knock on the door, and stop what is happening there
with necessary means.
With the necessary means that the public will think is correct, not you at that moment. The public thinks is correct, then you have to back off and let the officers do what they're trained to do.
Exactly.
And if you have a problem with how it's being done, then yes, more training more funds need to be put towards
Absolutely.
training and education as opposed to withdrawing funds.
Right.
Right.
Right. It snowballs at
Exactly.
At
So
that point.
it's like taking those polar sides, right,
Yeah.
on either end. So I think that
Yeah.
it's a great conversation though, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think
It's
most
something. Yeah. Do you get a lot of other questions from people?
a lot of people have questions.
Like when something happens,
When
I
something
text you.
no
Do
no
other
no
people?
a lot of people will ask me, hey, what would you have done? And a lot of times I'm, like, listen, I don't know what I would have done.
Right.
Have I been in situations like that? Maybe
Now
not.
let's talk about segue into the next one
Yeah.
about what you would have done. You can reveal
Yeah.
what you need to reveal, and you can say, I prefer not to answer. The next outrage was Atlanta, June 12th.
Mhm.
Rashard Brooks. Now he's been convicted 4 times, including a felony cruelty to children. So when you get into children, that's when I just anyway. And so they found him sleeping in his car in the Wendy's drive-through, and apparently he blew really high on the drunk, whatever. And so long story short, he's shot in the back, fleeing officers after he attacked them. Right. So this is the one that for me. So I'm gonna reveal my stance is unarmed in the back. I have a problem with it, regardless of circumstances. Obviously, someone will say, well, what if they're running towards little infants to jump on them? Of course, shoot them, right? That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a guy trying to flee. You had said, if I could say what you had said, are you okay with me revealing what you had said?
Yeah.
You had said, I would have shot him when he was on top of me trying to take my equipment. Because you don't know if he's trying to take your taser, he's trying to take your gun.
No, if I honestly listen, at the end of the day, I mean, I still to this day do not know how that officer, the moment he went to put the handcuffs on that individual, he knew when he was looking at that portable breath test, when he was looking at that and watching those numbers climb, bells should have been going off as, okay, this is what's going to happen next, right?
Really?
You at that, well, he's already, before you ever do, should have, before he did the portable breath test, I'm guessing he did some form of field sobriety test, walk.
But you can tell it's going to be conflict. There's going to be some.
No, he knew that the arrest was inevitable.
Oh, got
right?
it. Got it. Okay.
As soon as he had the guy put his hands behind his back. Now that officer probably had no idea what the guy's history was, other than maybe if he had a warrant or something like that. You're not going to know offhand, and that wouldn't go in any of your decision making. But I think that the moment that guy put his hands behind his back, and that officer, you have your main point of contact on the guys where, hey, sir, put your hands behind your back and release your fingers, whatever it may be, and you grab onto those fingers, the moment those shoulders tense up and the moment his arms tense up, you have an idea of what's coming next, right?
And it's either a turn,
it's a turn, it's going to be an elbow or a
when
fist.
do you
to the
pull
side
the
of your head.
taser out? Before the
So it's going to be an
handcuffs?
escalation of force, right? No. Taser, no. You're going hands on first, right?
Okay.
Every department will teach you verbal commands, then you're going hands on to some degree, and then you would escalate further.
Okay.
The moment he went hands on would include touching the guy's hands and going to put the handcuffs on him, right?
Mhm.
The moment that guy turned around and the fight was on, it's a hands on fight.
It's taser first, right?
Well, you'd go hands on and try to.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Okay.
Whatever it may be, an arm bar, whatever it may be, to de-escalate the situation. Now, the moment he reaches for your taser or your ASP or your whatever utility on your utility belt there, totally different situation, right? Like, I don't know if he's going for my gun. I have an idea because your gun's usually on one side, your taser's on the other side.
He still went. The irony is, he didn't go for his gun first. He went for his taser first.
Yep. So he's properly going up the use. He's properly going up the use, and then the moment the guy turns his back and starts running, it's over.
Well, in between there, didn't he tackle him? Where I'm pretty sure he was on the ground.
Oh, we're talking about
Atlanta.
Georgia.
Talking about Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta. Gosh,
they all come together
blending
at this point
right now. To that degree, I mean, man, you have
that's when you would have shot him.
Well, if he's on top of me, fighting me and going for my gun,
right,
it's over.
Like it feels like to me. So to me, if I hear that, I'm okay. I think
that's a different.
It's the running in a Wendy's parking lot. Good shot though, right? Well, I mean, with a handgun running.
Man, I know, but
that's a good shot. Was he former military?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
that is. But I mean, man,
Because I remember you told me, you said, now, okay, so some of the questions I have is just, do you let him go?
Yeah, you know who he
Into the
is.
trees.
Listen,
let him go.
listen. You've got his car. You've already run his driver's license. You know who this guy is. You let him go. You go to the magistrate or whomever. You get a warrant. Fleeing.
Are they reprimanded for letting him go?
No, not at all.
The police chief's not going to come
Well,
in
you're
and
going to chase
say,
after him on foot. You're going to initiate
Right.
a foot pursuit after the guy. But
yeah.
if
And
he
if
gets
he's
away,
on drugs and you're on donuts, that's
well,
a
that's a
whole,
totally different story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
you
I
can't-
mean, if at the end of the day, if the guy gets away, he gets away. You go get a warrant. You go get him later.
So why, if I'm to, again, I was outraged by this, but if I'm to sit down with the police officer in a private moment and just say, why shoot him? Is there any, talking about the mindset of a police officer, is there anything in your mind that says, I need to eliminate, because shooting is eliminating the threat, correct?
Stopping the threat. Yes.
Stopping the threat. Yes, not eliminate. Is there anything in your mind that you would say, well, like threat to others, or when he's 20 feet in front of you, pop, pop, pop?
You could have so many what ifs. Is there a school nearby? Is there, who knows? But at the end
Even
of the
at
day,
that
it
late
was
at
at
night?
night. It was at nighttime. So what
Interesting.
could it possibly be?
So I'm wondering if he has you've never been involved in anything like this. So I'm wondering
No,
if he, after the shots, he's like, I screwed up, because now you can't hide it with the cameras.
No, everything was on body, and that's what gets me too. Everything was on body camera. Everything, the assault, everything. I mean, we used to have it where, our dash cams would capture a lot of the. We'd always
Right.
arrest if you're going to put someone in handcuffs. You do it in front of your dash camera, right? So that everything would be videotaped. When we were training new officers, that was a great tool. Right. If something really bad happened, right, we could always go back and look at the video. Hey, did you see this? See his shoulders tense up? This is when you should have known.
So that's a conversation in training.
Absolutely, that's an absolute conversation from being in the police academy to when you're with your field training officer, and they're teaching you, hey, this is how our department does it.
So they could be, can psychologically speaking, can you talk while you're tensing up? Or is it all part of, like, if he's saying, I'm fine, and all of a sudden
it's a
so they
involuntary.
change.
That is an involuntary
Things
muscle.
change.
There's not, you cannot hide that.
Interesting. And this isn't a conversation about spiritualism, but there's a spirit to that. I'm convinced.
Oh, to some degree.
In this world we live in. So let's go to the last one, Jacob Blake, Kennesaw, August 23rd. This is the one that I offended my police officer friends, because I watched the video and I saw the taser attempt. And what's up with tasers? I mean, do they need to get better ones? I mean,
yeah,
it should knock you on your butt, I think.
A lot of it has to do with every individual is different. How close did I fire that taser to the individual? So the key is when you fire a taser, there's two barbs. Imagine two fish hooks. And when it goes out, the farther distance it travels, the farther those fish hooks separate. So your current level is going to be much greater, right? So you're now affecting shoulder to shoulder, as a point if I shoot someone with a taser and I'm only like a foot away from them, it's a specific part of the body, right? So you're not completely immobilizing the
and they could miss.
Well, yeah, you can only hit them with one barb, and then the other one goes flinging off into who knows where, and then it's not going to have the same effect as. Right. And I think in this circumstance here that there's obviously something going on that we didn't see originally,
right?
Where there was multiple officers, whatever it may have been. Now, I agree with you. Not knowing the whole situation, trying to rationally think it through. Maybe the officer knew that, or he didn't know that those were his kids, or that's a car full of kids. Or
they went there to arrest him.
Yeah, I believe so, to some degree. There was some sort of domestic. So if you think about this, there's a domestic violence situation where you have a husband and wife, right? Now you've got kids in the car. The wife's saying, hey, arrest the husband. Or I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but I'm just thinking this through. The wife says, hey, I need you to arrest your husband. He's assaulting me. He's threatening to take the kids.
And they look up online, and it says, not online, but in your database.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it says that he sexually assaulted a woman.
Oh, it would just come across prior domestic disturbance or something like that. It's not.
Because he was charged with felony third-degree sexual assault.
But the officers responding aren't going to know that.
Oh, they're not.
They're not going to know that offhand. They're just knowing, okay, he has priors for domestic, whatever it may have been, right? They're not going to broadcast the criminal history right off the bat they're not going to know that right off the bat.
Is that purposeful? Like,
no,
hey, this guy's got a prior sexual assault. You need to go protect.
Or you could say two priors, or they'll
Oh, they don't go into detail.
No,
It's,
no, no.
it's
They're not
just
going
like,
because we got to remember at the same time, everything that comes across a police scanner, there's so many scanners that monitor that,
oh, you're kidding.
right?
I
So
didn't even think about that.
you've got to watch out for a little bit of privacy to a
Interesting.
degree.
Ah,
So a lot of times that's why you'll have the 10 codes, 10, 20,
yes.
whatever it may be, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
to try to throw things off a little bit. But you know,
Interesting.
in this circumstance there, I mean, I don't know whether the officer was thinking, hey, this is a domestic assault. He hit her, whatever happened. The last thing I need is this guy getting in the car with 3 kids, and now we have a hostage
And a knife.
and a knife.
He had a knife.
So
Yeah.
now you have a hostage situation,
Right.
right?
Right.
I can't allow a hostage situation to happen.
Right.
I don't know if that's what he was thinking. I'm not.
But now
Man,
you have said, because my point was, again, unarmed man. If the man is armed, shoot him. I don't have a problem with that. If he's unarmed and in the back, if he's unarmed and he's coming at you, you need to stop.
Different, yeah.
You
Different,
shoot him.
totally different
Center
situation,
mass, I
yeah.
have no problem. In the back without it. And so the reports are real fuzzy on this one.
Yeah.
And we'll get into why that is because they don't have enough funds. We'll get into that in here in a minute. But like you said that you would have waited until you saw him physically grab the knife and turn before you're discharging.
Yeah.
Again, hindsight, you're not there.
Again,
we're not throwing judgment that way.
I would never want to put myself or anybody else in that situation that the officer had to make that split-second decision.
Do you think combat experience and does that come into play at all where you're now, not that you're more level-headed,
No.
but you have a different.
So when I first got on the police department, we had a generation of Vietnam veterans that were your captains, your lieutenants, and they had a completely different way of dealing with threats or dealing with situations. They were very hands-on, right? Very hands-on approach. Wrong, right, or indifferent at that time. You know, that's in hindsight. But we then had a generation of you know, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans which where I would fall into, where we have a completely different idea of what a threat is, right? I mean, from the roadside bombs to sniper fire to everything that I'm not saying every one of us has dealt with, but a lot of individuals have dealt with. You have a different degree, right? And then you have another set of officers that might be right out of college that got into a hiring fair at the right time that may have never been punched a day in their life, right? They have a completely different idea of what a life-threatening situation is. Yeah. And you can't train. You can simulate it, right? You can do all you want with training and education and everything like that. But boy, until it happens in real world, real time, real speed, boy, that's you can't. That's I think, and I think, like in a lot of professions in law enforcement, that is one of the hardest things that we face today. With regards to training and education as
well. And let's I don't know if you remember this conversation, but I asked you, where's the joy in police? You know, when I was growing up in the 70s, posters of police and firemen, they were almost the same, heroes in the community. Nowadays, you've got movies and thug life and this type of F the police type of mentality that has just grown over these decades. And I asked you once, I said, because when I get pulled over, I'm brown. Sometimes I feel left out between white and black conversation as a brown man. You know, when I get pulled over and a police officer walks up to me, they're very, you know, there's no smiling. There's not a lot of, right. And for good reason, I would imagine. And so I asked you once, where's the joy in the police? And you said on the day crew.
I think I said the day. We always joked about that the day shift officers are the guys that get to go out there, direct traffic, help the kids across the street. But then again, that was that was a smaller town that I was working at the time. But you know, a lot of the guys that work nights, you know, I work nights. I work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Panama schedule, 2 on, 2 off, 3 on, 3 off. So you're constantly, you know, battling. You're working all night and then dragging yourself into court at 9 a.m. after you just worked 12 hours and hopefully you didn't have any overtime, right?
Are most calls at night?
Yeah, well, different types of calls, right? And not to say that the folks on the day shift don't deal with the same stuff. You just, the volume of, you know, we always used to joke, you know, what do normal people do at 3 o'clock in the morning? Sleep, generally speaking, right? So the stuff that we had to deal with at 3 o'clock in the morning, whether it be assaults, domestic violence, stabbings, murders, drugs, carjackings, you don't normally deal with the best element in society, and you grow very jaded.
Regardless of color,
It
regardless of
didn't
skin
white,
color.
black,
Yeah.
didn't I've dealt with
Yeah.
white gang members, black gang members, Hispanic gang members. I've dealt with it didn't matter.
Right, right.
Um,
Is there because I would imagine there's a window of time at the early AM hours that you're getting majority of it, or you're getting calls at 5 a.m. with the same type of.
It didn't matter.
So those type of, because I've done studies on brains, emotional intelligence, and willpower, that a lot of it is your willpower is exhausted because willpower is replenished when you sleep. And so the later into the night, but I'm just wondering if there was data like between 12 and 3 is your most calls, or between 1 and 4 a.m. I'm just curious.
I don't,
In your experience, there's
no, thinking back, generally between, if I was to say on a weekday night, weekends, you can exclude that because we had concerts from different parts of the community. Washington, D.C. was usually booming nonstop. So that was a little different circumstance. But if you just look at weekday nights, Monday through Thursday,
sure.
usually between, say, through 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning, pretty quiet, right? For the most part, pretty quiet. Those parts of the community that we were in, we were in that part of the community for a reason. Not
right. How about the source, like whether it's domestic abuse? Well, I'm sure you can name off top 5 or whatnot. How many were impacted by some mind-altering substance?
I would say 99.9%.
It's either alcohol or drugs.
Of assault or domestic assault had some form of alcohol or
where
drug.
they're not in their right frame of mind.
Correct.
Okay. And then when rookies come out of the academy, what shift do they start with?
Night shift.
That's crazy to me because
Yeah.
we just talked about
not all the time. No.
But you see what I'm saying? If the worst of the worst
you got to see, but you got to remember that the point, so the point of a police academy is to give you a general idea of what to do, right? You're learning the laws, you're learning constitutional rights, you're learning that type of stuff. They can only simulate so much how you go into an abandoned building looking for whether there's homeless people squatting in there or illegal activity going on. You can't train that to a degree in the police academy, right? That's more for your local departments to step that part up. So we would put a lot of the new guys, they would put them on night shift with us so that we knew, I knew where to go at that time of night to where we could find certain criminal activity going on to get this individual the experience he needs while I'm still there with him.
So there's a shadowing element.
Correct.
They're not alone.
Correct. No, they're not alone. They are with an experienced. I had to go get certified as a field training officer.
Do they got to pay you extra? Because eventually you want to be day shift, right? I mean, is that the progression, or do some people like the night shift?
I love the night shift. I love everything that I knew what to expect. I didn't know what to expect on day shift.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Is there a feeling of being bored on day shift?
A fear of being bored, yeah.
Just like it's that much of a difference, and it's so lack of willpower, the abundance of mind-altering substance, and then you have these, these crimes that come up, and not that they're victims; they're still criminals.
Yeah,
committing a crime. But you had said that you'll bring someone in at night who beat his wife, was in court the next morning, and got released. The judge would say, well, I don't know what the judge would say, but then
or the party that got injured will show up to court and say, no, I fell down the stairs, nothing happened.
And it'll happen again. You'll get a call.
It will. The chances are that next night we're heading back out there. And I know you said something, and I said 99.9% alcohol. You got to remember, there's also that other very few where during the day, right? Jealousy comes up, human emotion comes up and causes things to happen, right? It's just, I think when you have that mind altering alcohol, narcotic, whatever it may be, it's just your ability to rationalize things changes
with the lack of willpower.
Hey, I need to walk away from this situation, right? Yeah. So but that was part of the conversation was we wanted to get those newer officers that experience so they could see it. So when they are on their own, they're not making things worse, or they're not putting themselves or other people in danger.
It's an interesting topic. So I'm going to close with this. And then let me see, no other questions. So well, look at that, we're right an hour. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for
You're
coming
welcome.
on this first episode of the What Say You about the police podcast. My closing thought is this: I believe we need police reform, and I've seen police park where they want at a gas station, convenience store to get a cup of coffee, and there's a bunch of open stalls, and they park right in the middle, walk out. I've heard stories, campfire stories of bragging about how they can speed because they show the badge and they're off. So I believe there needs to be a renewal of just the idea of what a police officer is in serving. Now, on these conditions, I believe I support police reform with the following requirements. Number one, increase funding for their training. Defunding the police is the wrong way to help our boys. And apparently, tasers aren't working. More hand-to-hand combat training, maybe. Martial arts training.
But now you're taking that off. So now you're taking off a lot of these emergency legislative sessions are taking chokeholds out of this scenario, right? So, now you're looking at a situation. Okay, well, and I'm not saying the chokehold is the right thing to do, but a lot of these officers, they're looking at like, I don't want to shoot the guy, I don't want to kill him. Okay, if I'm by myself, I don't have a partner. If I can put this guy in some sort of hold where I'm not killing him, you know whether someone's suffering.
Karate chop.
No, you can't do that. No,
you can't.
But you can hold on to him in some sort
strike.
of. No, you can't. Not unless it's not like a boxing match. You can't. You have to de-escalate the situation to some degree. You can't.
So when they come after you, most of the time it's going to be a side swipe and try to get them in a move. Sometime a hold,
some arm bar,
interesting,
elbow. Yeah, you try to put them in a hold.
Okay.
To then de-escalate, get them restrained.
Because if they're in the right frame of mind, they're gonna just eventually.
Generally speaking, as soon as someone is restrained, it's over.
Right.
And
then they're probably into this mode, right?
Yeah.
Where they
almost a depressive state, right?
Didn't mean to do it, or whatever excuse it is.
Absolutely. So
I see.
I think if you take some of these tools away, and listen, should you be able to choke someone out till they go blue? No, absolutely not. But I don't
think any of them have.
But I don't think they have.
Honestly,
but I would rather be in a position where I have a guy in some sort of hold to where I can de-escalate the situation, get him restrained, wait for backup, than to have to kill somebody. I don't think at the end of the day anybody wants.
So that's interesting so you would get in trouble if you popped the guy, Mike Tyson style.
Oh yeah, you couldn't do that. Yeah.
That's crazy. So again, so there you go. I learned something.
Not to derail here.
That's great. That's one of the things but that comes through training, more money. Jacob Blake, they didn't have body cams because they couldn't afford it.
A smaller department, I'm guessing they couldn't afford.
And you defund the police. So my next requirement. So first requirement is increase funding for the police. Second requirement is criminals have to agree to reform before the police agree to reform. So if you're watching this and you're a criminal, stop. If you cheat on your taxes, stop. If you smuggle candy into the movie theater, stop. Stop breaking these laws, what you may think are just a little bit. Or how about this? Someone hit me in my bumper, my neck, and I just hit the lottery. So I'm going to go sue for exorbitant amounts of money. These are all insurance fraud, number one crime in America. These are all criminal acts. Criminals need to reform. All of us have to reform our thinking before we can expect to reform the police. And finally, relegate mind-altering substance. The idea that the same people saying defund the police are the people that are saying legalize drugs blows my mind. I see that as a recipe for disaster. You defund the police force and you allow all drugs legal. Can you even imagine what that's going to be like?
I couldn't. I wouldn't even.
Hollywood would reject the script.
I'm looking at Portland right now. Right, yeah. You look at Portland, Oregon, and the 120 days of just protest, but not even like civil protests. Like we're talking like Molotov cocktails and burning things. You want to talk about the mental scars that's going to be putting on those law enforcement officers is got to be astronomical. Not to mention just the everyday citizen that just wants to get up and go to work and take care of their family. How do I explain to my kids what's going on outside the front door, right? Like, I think there's so much more. And I completely agree with you on the reform aspect on both sides,
On both
right?
sides.
I think it's both sides.
Yeah,
And I don't
do.
think anybody would disagree or argue.
I think a lot would, and that's what. And here's the thing: if you would disagree, that's okay if we talk about it.
Yep.
If I have not sat down now when I got in trouble from my police friends for posting too soon, I took the post down because my post is not more important than a friendship, and I think that's another aspect is that I can still be outraged though, and I can still push for some type of change. I just want to make sure it's not against our civil liberties, and that we do it the right way because you have to fix the problem, and the problem I think starts with each of us in just stop doing criminal acts. So that is the What Say You about the police. Next Wednesday, I'll do a live podcast. Always Go Big podcast, a little different format, and then we'll do this once a month. All right, everyone, have a great day. Peace out.